Welcome to Acquire Connected, a podcast that is your compass in the world of data across environmental, social and governance.
Welcome to the Acquire Connected podcast. I'm Jamie Nobbs, your host for this podcast, and today we sit down with Yulia Merrill. Yulia is a leader in the information management and governance space and is also the president of the Perth chapter of DAMA. In today's episode, we have a great chat about why data governance is so critical, the impact it can have on companies when done well and when not so well, and then what steps companies can take to build a robust data governance framework. I thoroughly enjoyed today's conversation and I hope you do too. So let's get into it. Would you be able to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and the work you do?
Sure. So my name is Yulia Merrill, and I'm a leader in data services and technology with a passion for turning data challenges into exciting opportunities. My journey began as a programmer, and over the years, I've worked on projects, modernizing systems, developing data quality initiatives, and more recently, diving into the risk space to mitigate data, privacy, and artificial intelligence risks. So that's certainly something that, if I look back at, 20, 25 years ago, would I ever be in data risk? That's not something really that crossed my mind back then. It was all about coding lines and how to write efficient code for sure. And so over the years, I've had the privilege of leading multidisciplinary teams across many sectors like healthcare, banking, and utilities, and collaborating with various stakeholders that included accountants, doctors, nurses, asset engineers, data scientists, data engineers, just to name a few, and delivering impactful data initiatives. And as the current president of DAMA Perth, I'm deeply committed to advancing data governance practices and mentoring the next generation of data leaders.
I'm really excited to talk to you today about some of the data governance frameworks and getting them set up, particularly with how much experience you have across different industries. I think it'll be really, really fascinating. In terms of data governance, are you able to explain what data governance is and why it is so critical across any industry that people work in?
Yes. Well, before we get into data governance, let's take a moment to think about data. Let's just look at it a little bit more in detail. So data is truly unlike any other type of asset. Physical assets are tangible. They can be touched, moved, or locked away. But data, it's intangible. It can be copied effortlessly, yet once lost, it's often nearly impossible to recreate. When data is lost, trying to recreate it, speak to any data professional, it'll take more effort to bring it back. So, and even more intriguingly, data can be stolen without the original ever physically disappearing. And so this unique nature of data makes managing it a complex and critical challenge. And I think that's where data governance comes into play. So data governance essentially is the framework that ensures data is managed responsibly, securely, and effectively throughout its life cycle. It establishes the roles, responsibilities, policies, and standards across the organization that dictate how data is created, stored, shared, and used. In other words, the data lifecycle. So why is data governance so important? Well, in today's data-driven world, businesses rely on accurate, trustworthy data to make informed decisions. Without proper governance, data can quickly become unreliable, insecure, and even a liability. And data governance isn't then just about control. It's about empowering organizations to unlock the full value of their data while maintaining trust, transparency, and compliance. I've recently read a Forbes article which revealed that 60 to 73% of data within organizations is never used strategically. Can you imagine that? And that's because we are able to bring whatever data we want. And that's where acts like Australian Privacy Act and GDPR come in to kind of, whilst technologically we can, legislatively now there are some boundaries to that. And then we've got also research from Carnegie Mellon University, which found that 90% of data becomes dark data. And what that is an overlooked and underutilized data. And this represents both a lost opportunity and a significant risk. And so good governance safeguards data assets. It ensures regulatory compliance and it drives better outcomes for organizations. It's not just about setting rules, it's about unlocking data's full potential while fostering trust, transparency, and importantly, long-term value.
I think that's a fantastic explanation of not only data governance, but also some of the risks around data as well, and why it is so important for a lot of businesses. You mentioned dark data. I haven't actually heard that term before, which is it's quite a fascinating one, because I think that is something a lot of companies are aware of, is they're collecting a lot of information but not necessarily using it. Is that the case across multiple industries, or are there particular industries where you see that more than others?
From what I've seen, it is certainly something that has been across many industries. And that's why there is a way to make sure that the data that you're collecting actually or creating is for a purpose. And this is where it's that whole software development lifecycle, for example, and you start with business requirements. So collecting data, the data that you collect needs to link to a business purpose. Is that well defined? Is that well defined at the beginning of the initiatives? And absolutely, as I said before, technologically, there is nothing that's stopping us from collecting and creating as much data as we can. But when we actually do that, not only do we increase the risk, because that data, the unused data, becomes this absolute sweet spot for cyber criminals to go and grab it and then sell it on the dark market. But also what organizations need to start considering is the cost. The cost of maintaining that data are increasing.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. I'm sure there are people that think collecting data potentially that they might use in the future isn't such a bad thing. I'm thinking companies perhaps that are collecting a lot of environmental data, they might be reporting on that environmental data set in the future. But I guess it's a bit of a balance between the security risks and the financial implications of holding that data now if you don't necessarily need it for the future.
Yes, absolutely. If you know that environmental data, for example, so if you know that there is future legislations that are coming through, and you know that there may be more likely than not that additional environmental data will be required, then there is a value for that to collect it. But it's more so around personal information that we need to be a little bit more considerate, actually quite a lot more considerate than the industry used to be before. And it's not just about collecting it. The other side of it is retaining it. And that's where a lot of organizations, and if you look at the data breaches that have happened over the last several years, they've really targeted big organizations that had some retention periods that were not necessarily with limited timelines. And that's where, for example, in Western Australia, we have the State Records Office Act, which has a retention schedule, and we've got Australian Privacy Principles and Australian Privacy Act that sort of helps and puts guidelines and actually regulations around collecting data. So it's that at the beginning, at the end, we have regulations in place that help organizations design the purpose of data and then also design the systems with those regulation requirements in mind and to be put in place.
It's interesting to hear how the legislation is being put in place to kind of create those, I guess, boundaries for companies. It sounds like we still have a fair way to go in terms of data governance and doing it well, and how we host the information, how we manage it. I guess it sounds like we've still got a bit of improving to go, but in terms of government, it's nice to see that there are guardrails in place to make sure that companies are doing the right thing with that data. You've talked about how hard it is for companies to get data back once it's missing. If we look at things like duplicate data or outdated information, are there any impacts of having that on an organisation, either short or long term?
Yes, absolutely. So fragmented and inconsistent data can absolutely have significant short and long-term impacts on an organization. So, for example, let's consider an energy company managing contract and asset data, and data is stored across outdated spreadsheets. And yes, spreadsheets is still a thing, and I think spreadsheets are going to be here for a long time still. We've got disconnected systems, and we've got paper records. So teams may waste days reconciling information to verify lease terms, for example, or equipment availability or maintenance schedules, which is even more scary, leading to operational delays and missed opportunities. And similarly, a retail company, we can take any retail company, and with duplicate customer records, they might be sending conflicting promotional offers, which can frustrate customers and definitely erode brand loyalty. And in the long term, these issues can escalate. So duplicate and missing and outdated data leads to poor data quality. And over time, it erodes trust in organizational systems and resulting in missed opportunities for innovation, regulatory penalties, as we've discussed, and even reputational damage. So you've talked about environmental data. So it's probably a good scenario to consider as well. If a mining company submits incorrect environmental impact data report due to missing records, it risks project delays, fines, and even sometimes public backlash. Also, just talking through this, I'd also like to shine a spotlight on another important fundamental aspect that probably does not always get a mention, but works hand in hand with data governance, and that is application governance. So this is again leading towards that duplicate, missing, and outdated information, and why is application governance important? So, for example, company decides to customize an off-the-shelf product, and sometimes that leads to breaking architecture, data relationships. It introduces formatting issues, which lead to missing and incompatible data. Application governance ensures that the systems generating, storing, and processing data are aligned and standardized. And this might involve implementing master data management tools to synchronize, for example, customer records, or deploying data catalogs to make information searchable and reliable. So by prioritizing both data and application governance, organizations can maintain consistency, reduce risk, reducing risks of duplicate, missing, and outdated information. And that way they ensure they remain competitive in an increasingly data-driven world.
The application governance is a fascinating one, because when you think of data management, you potentially think of just one tool, but I guess having that application governance also ensures that it can interoperate with other systems across the business, so that one application isn't risking the security or the integrity of data. Yeah, exactly. So I think it is interesting from an operational perspective that companies should not only consider their data governance from within one system, but across applications at that kind of higher level as well.
Yes, data lineage, whether it's in the business processes or that sort of data integration and data flows need to be designed between different systems. And this is where we've got the solution architecture playing an important role as well. And this is where we've got the business having an absolutely critical role playing in delivering any solutions as well. That, business defines their requirements, business defines their business rules, and then it's up to the development cycle to stitch that data from that business concept all the way through different systems to get the outcome for the business to make decisions.
How often should companies be revisiting those business rules?
Oh, that is a really good question. Okay, so I'll probably start with an easy one. So rule number one for me when developing a system is, first of all, considering regulatory requirements. And so as soon as there is a change, or there's going to be a change in the regulatory guidelines and requirements, that's where you go and you set up the review of the business rules and how they have been implemented across the different systems. Secondly, how often do you review business rules? I suppose when you start noticing, or when the organization realizes that its strategic direction is changing, what does that look like? How is that strategic direction reflected in those business rules? And again, how do we go back? As soon as we recognize that, the organization should really start reviewing the business rules and start implementing changes to ensure they remain strategically viable.
Mm-hmm. So it is a recurring thing anytime there is changes to legislation, for example, or changes or new pieces of software coming into a business. It is something that you kind of need to stay on top of. You can't just set and forget it.
And another important one is that when you're expecting to get an output from a system and you're not getting what you were expecting, so that's where you also go and you review your business rules to make sure that they have been defined properly and that there is no inconsistencies in the interpretation of the flow between different systems.
It's an interesting one. It seems like it must be hard for companies to have to kind of stay on top of that when it's not necessarily part of their business as usual day-to-day kind of role. I'm sure it can be hard for companies to stay on top of. Do you agree with that, or do you think it should be something that once set up is easier for companies to manage?
It's definitely something that needs to be included in their program of work, and just really consistently reviewing the validity of the application and how the rules are sort of reflected in that.
So if we flip this, what does a company with a robust data governance framework look like in your ideal world?
Okay, so another excellent question. And so let's go ahead and imagine a company with a perfect data governance framework. I'll reference this cinematically, and it's like a sci-fi utopia where everything just works. So no one is frantically searching through outdated spreadsheets. There is no mysterious file named final_capital letters final_version 3 floating around, and decisions happen faster than the speed of an email thread. Imagine that kind of company, and where every piece of data is neatly cataloged, it's easily accessible and ready to fuel innovation. But let's actually bring that back down to reality. A robust data governance framework doesn't have to feel overwhelming or intrusive. In fact, many of us are already practicing aspects of data governance in our roles and even in our personal lives. So anytime you save a document in the right folder, clean up your inbox, or double check a report for accuracy, you're already practicing data governance, whether you realize it or not. And that's the exciting part for me personally. So for organizations, effective data governance is about embedding these practices into everyday operations in a way that feels seamless and natural to people. It's not just about processes, it's about having clear pathways to address data issues and empower teams to work smarter. This might involve establishing policies for managing contracts, ensuring seamless integration between applications. It's setting up data council or a committee to oversee funding and resource allocation, or enabling self-service analytics with trusted data. So ultimately, data governance is more than just a framework. It's a culture of trust, importantly, accountability, that ensures everyone in the organization can rely on data with confidence and make better decisions and drive success.
That's a fascinating point, actually. It doesn't have to be this big, overwhelming policy change. If done right, you potentially don't even notice it. It's just the way that people operate within a business. I think that's, and in their home life, like you said, it's something that we kind of already do, but perhaps don't consider it data governance, because I think there's a connotation around data governance that it has to be hard, it has to be difficult to manage, difficult to implement. So it's interesting to hear that when it's done well, you don't actually need to even notice it's happening necessarily. I think that's fascinating.
And, doing it well, as we are all doing it already, it's not a roadblock. It's just really making sure that we're a bit more cognizant around our responsibility around data and what it can lead to if it's not managed right.
So that leads nicely on to my next question in terms of the data governance framework. Now, you've already mentioned the cinematic journey that you went on. For people that weren't at Acquire Connect Tech Summit this year, as a keynote speaker, you referenced Mad Max to talk about data poorly governed. And then Star Trek was the other, to talk about the utopia of data governance.
Yeah.
So at Acquire Connect, you talked about a 4-step process that companies can take to build a data governance framework. And I'd really like to go into those 4 steps. So to start off with, step 1 was establish data leadership. Step 2, build a data framework. Step 3, empower data owners and stewards. And then step 4, lead change management. If we look at step 1 to begin with, establishing data leadership, what does that look like in a company? Is it just one person being accountable for the data being collected, or is data leadership across the entire organization?
I certainly touched on the 4 key steps. Of course, these are by no means the only steps to consider. There is a wealth of other areas to explore. Just take a glance at the DAMA Wheel of Knowledge areas for a comprehensive view of data management. But yes, for now, let's focus on my streamlined approach to fast-tracking data governance implementation. Yes, so step 1, establishing data leadership. So data leadership is not just about appointing one person to be accountable for data. It's about creating a clear structure of responsibility and decision-making. So at the top, it might include a Chief Data Officer or CDO, or a similar role that aligns data strategy with business goals. Very important step to make sure that your data strategy is aligned with business goals. But effective data leadership extends beyond that one person. It should include a council or governance committee representing key business areas, ensuring that data initiatives are prioritized and aligned across the organization. So again, let's take an example, a mining company. We might have a leadership group overseeing how production data integrates with sustainability metrics and financial reporting. Each leader in this group ensures their respective areas are represented, creating a culture of shared accountability for data quality and, importantly, outcomes.
So it's accountability on all across the business. It's not leadership as in one leader of it. It needs to be accountability across the organisation.
Absolutely.
Okay. And in terms of, we'll just jump to step 2, building a data framework. At Acquire, we talk about the importance of people, process, and technology in our solutions. So one can't work without the other. You need the people and the processes in place for technology to be able to use it well. The 4th part of the framework that you mentioned, the data framework that you mentioned, was culture as well. How do you see those 4 parts working together?
So as you rightly pointed out, the people, processes, technology, PPT, is basically the cornerstone of any successful data framework. And culture is the thing, it's that glue that ties it all together, really. It just ensures that data is seen not as an afterthought, but as an asset that drives decision making. One of my favorite quotes by Peter Drucker is that culture is a strategy for breakfast. And so you can absolutely put all the effort, all the funding that you can into people, processes, and technology. But if you do not have that mentality, that culture that appreciates data and sees it as an asset, it's certainly going to be very difficult to maintaining a robust and good data framework. But, people, we all know that people are the heart of any organization, driving the management and execution of activities across the data framework. So equipping them with the right skills, knowledge, and tools is critical to success. Key roles such as data owners and data stewards bring expertise and accountability, responsibility, ensuring a deep understanding of the business context surrounding the data. And so these roles function within defined data domains, which are another cornerstone of effective data governance. So establishing data domains, so essentially it's logically grouping your data into these domains, create clear lines of accountability and responsibility, fostering collaboration and clarity among business teams while ensuring data is managed consistently and effectively. You're probably hearing me through this conversation mentioning and talking a lot about collaboration, but that's essentially what it takes to ensure that we do have a successful and sustainable data governance, really. And then, if we move down to the next level, and it's the processes, and processes it's important to have standardized processes in how data is created, accessed, and maintained. And so this is where we've got, as I said, we've got the APPs, Australian Privacy Principles, and let's say WA State Record Office retention schedule, kind of guiding some of that standardization around creating and retaining data. And so it's creating that consistency. It helps create consistency and reduce errors for the organizations. And then the people that we have delegated and formally nominated as data owners or data stewards, they need to use these processes to address and manage data across the organization. And so that includes data handling on a daily basis kind of questions. It's these people, these data owners and data stewards participate in organizational projects. It could be anything from data migrations or implementing new systems, just making sure that data lens is represented in the organization across the main channels in innovation delivery. And then, technology, it enables scalability and efficiency. So with tools like data catalogs, metadata repositories, and analytics platforms, making data easier to use and trust. And then and this is where we can then overlay those standardized processes as well into tech to ensure that, again, there is that consistency, and that we've got tech that supports us as an organization and our goals in delivering on robust data governance.
That is a lot to consider. It's a lot to consider for a company ensuring that the people are skilled in that, in the processes, in the technology, ensuring that the processes are set up to support the people and the technology, to ensure that the culture is set so that data governance isn't an afterthought. They are all really interconnected. It seems like it basically takes into account every aspect of a business. Now, you mentioned data owners and stewards. So that was step 3 of your streamlined version. How does that differ from the data leadership team? And what are the ways that you can empower someone that is a data owner or a data steward to do that role effectively? I guess that's a 2-pronged question there.
Yeah, sure. So empowering data owners and stewards. So data owners and data stewards, they complement leadership, but they focus on operational execution. So operational execution sits more within the responsibilities of a data steward. So while leadership sets the vision and priorities, data stewards are the hands-on champions. Data owners are typically senior roles with accountability for specific data sets like customer or asset data or sales and so forth. And they really ensure that it all aligns with organizational standards. Whilst data stewards, on the other hand, are the day-to-day runners, sometimes I like to call them, and they're subject matter experts essentially. They monitor data quality, they address issues. There's someone on the ground that people can go to and ask for advice on how to address certain data issues and questions, dilemmas, and just really they ensure that data governance processes are followed. And when, I've referred to domains before as well, and how data also sort of flows between different applications and whatnot. So data can flow through domains too. And this is where data stewards then play that collaborative role as well. And this idea of working groups between data domains can be stood up if there is a query that impacts on, let's say customer and asset or sales domain. So they're the ones that basically would bring the relevant data stewards or subject matter experts between those domains and sort of figure out a way to resolve an issue. Just think about this. How often does this happen in an organization? I bet you these conversations happen already. It's just that people don't have the data steward role formally allocated to them. And again, it kind of goes back to that non-invasive data governance. So, and really empowering these roles involves providing them with the tools, training, and importantly, authority to act. So, for example, again, just pulling out an example, a data steward in a mining company might commonly validate geospatial data for accuracy, ensuring that operations can proceed without costly errors.
It sounds like the data owners and the data stewards are really the front line. So they need the authority to make the calls, but ultimately, the data sits with them and they work with the data. So they are really that front line. And then the leadership are really, like you said, setting the strategy and the vision. So thank you for clarifying those two. In terms of the 4th step, this is probably the most difficult for a lot of companies to begin. So it's looking at lead change management. If companies are looking to integrate or to migrate to new systems, bring in new technology, whatever that may look like, for companies that are struggling with implementing effective change management, how can they navigate this? In your experience, how have you seen companies do it well, or do you have any advice for companies that are just looking to start that change management in their organization?
Yeah, so look, change management is where really the rubber meets the road, so to say, and it's often the toughest step. Companies do struggle with change management. There's 3 probably key messages that I've learned through my experience, and that is, number 1, communicate the why. So just make sure everyone understands the purpose behind the change, whether it's migrating to a new system or implementing governance policies. people need to see the benefits, not just the workload. And it's quite interesting. One of the frequent questions that I used to get, and I still do when implementing data governance and data management frameworks, and that is, what is going to be my workload? And as I have alluded to, there is really no more workload on people when implementing, let's say, data governance, for example, is because that's already something that they're doing. And really communicating the why, it is important. Engage early and often is another important strategy. So involve stakeholders from the start, especially those directly impacted. So their input can identify potential roadblocks, and it certainly accelerates their buy-in most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then really provide continuous support. So change isn't a one-time event. It's a process, it's continuous. It's also, it should be evolving. So provide training, clear documentation, and responsive support channels to ensure users feel confident in adopting new practices or technologies. For instance, let's consider a company transitioning to a new data integration platform or a new system that's been implemented to carry out, financial processes. So ensuring that teams receive hands-on training and ongoing support can make the difference between a smooth rollout and widespread frustration. So, and I think importantly, leading with empathy and clarity, companies can turn resistance into enthusiasm.
So the 3 pieces of advice, just to make sure I've got this right, is explaining the why, engaging often and early and often, and then leading with empathy would be the 3 key things to look at when you're implementing any change management in an organization. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. I think they're very easy to understand, perhaps more difficult to implement, but I think they are really tangible things that people can take away from that change management and your experience in doing it as well, or seeing how companies do it. So let's talk DAMA now. DAMA is from your website, non-for-profit industry association dedicated to advancing the profession of data management. How does an association like DAMA support its members, and who is a part of an organisation like this?
So as the lead of the DAMA Perth chapter, my role is to build a vibrant and supportive network of data professionals here in Perth and supporting Australia nationwide. So DAMA supports its members by providing access to resources like the DAMA DMBOK framework, professional certifications, webinars, and workshops to enhance skills and knowledge. We also create opportunities for networking and collaboration, enabling members to learn from one another and tackle the evolving challenges of the data industry together. So DAMA welcomes anyone with an interest in data management, whether you're a seasoned professional, a student starting your journey, or just an enthusiast eager to learn more. Our diverse community includes data analysts, data stewards, engineers, and leaders, all working to advance their careers in the field of data management as a whole.
And where do people go to join?
So dama.org.au is our website, and have a look around. There is benefits page as well that I usually ask members to go and have a look at. You can see if it is something that you're interested in, and we're happy to have anyone on board.
I'll link it in the show notes because you did reference the DAMA website when talking about the data governance wheel, I think it was. So I'll link it there if people want to go have a look as well. And my last question for you today is, what are you most proud of being the president of the Perth chapter? Are there any particular initiatives or projects that you've done that have been most rewarding for you in that role?
So I'll start off by mentioning our DAMA Australia mentoring program. So it is a nationwide initiative. Over the past 12 to 18 months, DAMA Australia has worked really hard to strengthen DAMA Australia mentoring program, and it's been incredibly rewarding to see the impact. So this program, which now runs through Mentor Loop, Group Loops feature, connects certified data management professionals, or CDMPs, with individuals in the broader data community, enabling to share knowledge and professional growth on focused data management topics. The success of this program was recognized when DAMA Australia won Mentor Loop Mentoring Award for the most impactful mentoring program for 2024. It's a testament to the value of building connections within our community, and just highlights how mentoring can drive meaningful change, both for individuals and the industry as a whole. And secondly, I'm proud of how we've created a platform for people to share their knowledge and lessons learned, whether it's through our chapter meetings, webinars, or panel discussions. We're fostering an environment where data professionals can exchange ideas, showcase innovative solutions, and learn from real-world examples and their experiences. And one of my favorite moments is when members tell me that they've applied a lesson or an insight they heard at one of our events to solve a challenge in their own work. And it's just a reminder that sharing knowledge not only strengthens the individual, but also elevates the entire profession. So these initiatives are about more than just events or programs, really. They're about building a community where people feel supported, inspired, and really equipped to advance their careers and contribute to the evolving world of data management.
Sounds like you guys are doing some really great work. So yeah, for anyone that's interested in learning more about DAMA Australia, DAMA Perth, I'll pop a link in the show notes. But I think that's all we've got time for. So let's leave it there. Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me today. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to be on your fabulous podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Acquire Connected. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to support the show, please share it around or feel free to leave a review. To stay up to date on the next season of episodes dropping, please hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast player or app you're listening to this episode on.
Thanks for listening to the Acquire Connected podcast channel. Find us at acquire.com.au.